All right, so you're thinking about higher ed jobs, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. But I bet some of those titles like adjunct lecturer instructor, they can be a little confusing, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Well, that's what we're going to unpack today.
It's really fascinating how each university seems to have their own twist on these roles. It's
Yeah.
almost like a secret code.
Right. A secret code.
But we're here to break it down for you.
Yeah, totally. And I actually came across this story about someone who applied for an adjunct professor position,
Okay.
but then like later on they discovered that the university had these like different levels of adjunct professor,
hmm
each with like totally different expectations.
Oh, wow.
It's really easy to get tripped up.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's start by like really diving into those adjunct roles.
Yeah, good idea.
Because those are often seen as like the entry point to teaching in higher ed.
Yeah, definitely.
So when I hear adjunct, I think, okay, maybe teaching one or two classes,
hmm
but not necessarily a super long-term commitment. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Adjunct positions are usually part-time and they really focus on teaching.
Okay.
And they don't offer a path to tenure or anything,
Right.
but they can be a really great way to get some experience. Dip your toes into academia,
Right.
especially if you value flexibility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like having a side hustle.
Yeah. That's like having a side hustle in like the world of knowledge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And this is where it can get a little tricky. The qualifications for adjunct roles, they can vary so much
Oh, really?
between different institutions and even departments.
Wow.
Some places they might require a PhD.
Okay.
Others might be open to folks with just a master's or even just industry experience.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Just industry experience.
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah.
I always thought you needed at least a master's to teach at the college level.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, a lot of people think that
Yeah.
it's a common misconception. But, a lot of institutions value that real-world expertise, especially in fields like business engineering or the arts.
That makes sense.
That's that professor of practice concept we'll talk about later.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But, so you might have an adjunct teaching marketing who's actually running their own agency or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that brings up another interesting thing, the idea of adjunct pools.
Okay, what's that?
A lot of departments keep these lists of potential instructors,
Huh.
and they can call on them when they need to fill a vacancy
Okay.
or if enrollment suddenly jumps up or something.
Right.
So you might just be going about your day
Yeah.
and get a call like, hey, can you teach intro to sociology tomorrow?
Wow, really?
It can happen like
Yeah.
that. Being an adjunct often means being able to adapt
Yeah.
and jump in on short notice.
Got it. Flexibility is key.
Exactly.
Okay, so adjuncts are about kind of dipping your toes in, getting some experience,
Yeah.
and maybe sharing your real-world expertise.
Yeah.
Okay, what about those other common titles we hear? Lecturer and instructor.
Okay, yeah.
Are they basically the same as adjunct?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
While those titles are often used kind of interchangeably,
Yeah.
they can signal a slightly different level of commitment and responsibility.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Think of lecturers and instructors as offering a little more stability
Okay.
and maybe a step up on that academic ladder.
More stability. I like the sound of that.
Right.
Tell me more.
Well, lecturers and instructors, they often have year-long contracts,
What?
sometimes even multi-year contracts.
Oh, wow.
And they might be eligible for benefits like health care and retirement contributions.
There's a big difference from the gig economy feel of adjuncting.
Right.
Yeah, big time.
But there's a catch here.
Oh, no.
Even with these titles, the specifics can vary a lot between universities.
Oh, okay.
Let's take the University of Michigan and California State University, Sacramento as examples.
Okay.
Both of them have these tiered systems for lecturers, but the criteria are totally different.
So how do their systems differ?
Well, at Michigan, your level as a lecturer depends on what your duties are.
Okay.
Are you mainly teaching?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you also involved in administrative work or curriculum development or student mentoring?
Interesting.
At Sacramento, the tiers are based on your experience and degrees.
Okay.
So a lecturer D has more experience and a higher degree than a lecturer A.
Gotcha.
And that's reflected in their pay and benefits.
So even though the titles sound similar, the actual roles and compensation can be really different.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to really understand the specific context of each institution and each position before you apply.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Don't just go by the title alone, Look
Right.
at the fine print.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people myself included, we kind of make assumptions based on the title
Sure.
without really understanding the nuances.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
Yeah.
But, with a little research, you can navigate this whole landscape with more confidence and land the position that really fits your goals.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of goals, let's move beyond the basics of adjunct lecturer and instructor
Okay.
and dive into some more specialized roles you might come across. All right, so let's pick up where we left off, exploring some of those more specialized roles in academia.
Yeah.
We were talking about those clinical professor and professor of practice titles.
Yeah, they sound interesting.
Yeah, they kind of have a lot of overlap with the other roles we've been talking about.
They seem to blend like the academic world with real-world experience.
Yeah, you got it. They really bridge that gap between theory and practice.
Right.
Think of them as like experts in their fields,
Yeah.
who are really passionate about sharing their knowledge and mentoring the next generation.
I like that.
Yeah.
But how do these roles actually work in practice?
Okay, good question.
Are we talking full-time, part-time tenure track?
Well, it can vary, but clinical professors and professors of practice are usually full-time,
Yeah, okay.
non-tenure track positions.
Gotcha.
Their focus is mainly on teaching and mentorship,
Okay.
not so much on research.
Right.
They often have renewable contracts,
Okay.
but their career path is different from the traditional tenure track.
So in a way, they're kind of similar to lecturer positions.
Yeah, there are definitely some similarities.
Okay.
But what sets clinical professors and professors of practice apart is that they're still really connected to their industries.
Right. They're bringing that real-world experience.
Exactly.
So they're like keeping their knowledge and skills up to date and relevant.
Yeah, totally.
That's got to be valuable for the students.
Yeah, for sure. It's a win-win.
Right.
Students get those real-world perspectives and connections, and the professors get to share their passion and expertise.
That's a good system.
Right.
Yeah.
I think these roles would be especially appealing in fields like business, healthcare, and technology.
Right. Where things are always changing.
Exactly. Now let's switch gears a little and talk about another pathway. Visiting assistant professors, or VAPs.
Okay, VAPs.
These are temporary positions that can be a great stepping stone for those who are aiming for a tenure track job later on.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned them earlier
Yeah.
as a good way to get some teaching experience.
Right.
But how are they different from like a postdoctoral position?
Okay, good question.
Which is also temporary and research focused, right?
The key difference is what they emphasize.
Okay.
VAPs are mainly focused on teaching,
Okay.
while postdocs prioritize research.
Gotcha.
VAPs give you a taste of what it's like to be faculty, with things like designing courses, mentoring students, and even participating in departmental committees.
So it's like a test run for a tenure track position,
Pretty much.
but with more teaching.
Yeah, exactly.
And some VAPs even have the possibility of turning into a tenure track position later on,
That's right.
depending on the university and the department.
Yeah,
That sounds encouraging for those who want to go down that tenure track.
for sure.
But is there a risk of like getting pigeonholed as a teaching only person if you focus too much on VAPs early on?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You need to strike a balance.
Exactly.
If your ultimate goal is a tenure track position that's heavy on research,
Yeah,
you also need to show a strong research track record.
right.
VAPs might not give you as much time or support for research
Yeah, that's true.
compared to a postdoc.
Right.
Okay, so it's all about finding that balance
Yeah.
between teaching experience and research,
Exactly.
depending on your goals.
Yeah,
Okay, let's talk about postdocs now.
sure.
They sound like the research equivalent of a boot camp.
Haha, that's a good analogy.
Right.
Postdocs are all about immersing yourself in research,
Right.
publishing your work, and building a reputation in your field. They're usually 2 to 3 years long
Okay.
and often involve working closely with a senior faculty member on their projects.
It's like an apprenticeship
Exactly.
for aspiring researchers.
You're getting hands-on experience learning advanced research techniques and developing your own research agenda.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But I've heard that postdocs aren't paid very well
Yeah.
and that they're super competitive.
It's true that postdoc salaries aren't typically as high as faculty salaries,
Right.
and the competition for those good positions can be tough.
Yeah.
But the experience you gain during a postdoc can be really valuable,
Okay.
especially if you're aiming for a tenure track position at a research-focused university.
Right. Makes sense.
Think of it as an investment in your future.
I like that.
Now, we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
There are all these different titles for postdoc positions.
Right. Postdoctoral fellow.
Yeah, postdoctoral research associate.
Postdoctoral scholar.
You can get confusing.
Right. Does it actually matter which title you have?
They can. The differences are often subtle,
Okay.
but they can affect things like your pay, your benefits, and even your taxes. Sometimes the distinctions are related to funding sources,
Oh.
like a postdoctoral fellow might be supported by a specific grant,
Right.
while a postdoctoral employee might be paid directly by the university.
So those little words can actually have a big impact.
Absolutely. It's really important to clarify those details with the department or HR
Okay.
before you accept any position.
Good advice.
Don't be afraid to ask about the specifics of the position and how it's classified.
Right. Always ask questions.
Exactly.
It seems like the best way to figure out this whole academic job title thing is to be informed
Yeah.
and to ask questions.
You got it. Knowledge is power, especially in academia.
I like that.
Speaking of knowledge, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
But there's one more important area we need to talk about.
Okay, what's that?
Finding these opportunities.
Right.
Specifically, adjunct lecturer and instructor positions.
Okay, so we've explored this whole world of academic job titles, from adjuncts to professors of practice and everything in between.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But let's get practical. Where do you actually find these positions?
Right. Good question.
I imagine it's not like your typical job search. You know?
Yeah, you're right. The academic job market, it has its own kind of rhythm and resources.
Okay, so what are some of those resources?
Well, networking is huge.
Okay.
Going to conferences,
Yeah.
connecting with people in your field. But there's one main hub that you really can't miss.
Okay, what's that?
academicjobs.com.
academicjobs.com. Okay.
You've probably heard of it.
Yeah, I have. But I'll admit, I haven't really looked into it much.
Sure.
What makes it so important for people interested in higher ed careers?
Well, think of it as like the central place for academic positions
Oh.
all over the world.
Wow.
It's this big database that covers all kinds of institutions, from small colleges to big universities.
Gotcha.
You can search for jobs by discipline, location, job type, and even like keywords.
So it's like a one-stop shop for academic jobs.
Pretty much. And it's especially helpful for those adjunct lecturer and instructor positions.
Okay, how so?
Well, those roles are often advertised locally.
Right.
And academicjobs.com brings all those listings together so
Yeah.
you can find opportunities that you might not have seen otherwise.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Especially for people just starting out or those who want to move somewhere new.
Right. It's like having this big overview of the whole job market.
I like that.
And it's not just about finding open positions.
Okay, what else does it do?
Academicjobs.com also has tons of resources and advice for job seekers.
Okay, cool. Like what?
Tips on writing your CV and cover letter, insights on interviews, and negotiating your salary.
Wow, that's super helpful.
It's like having a career coach right there with you.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It's a really valuable tool to have
For sure.
as you navigate this exciting but sometimes confusing world.
This has been so helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a much better understanding of how higher ed works and all the different career options out there.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. It's been fun talking about this with you.
So to our listeners out there who are ready to start their own academic journey, remember to check out academicjobs.com.
Yeah, great advice.
It's your guide to the world of higher education careers.
It's the best place to find those adjunct lecturer and instructor positions that can get you started in academia.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.